everybody, we're back, and I'm super excited to do this again. So, thank you so much for being so patient. The website is new. We have introduced a couple of new things, and I hope you did check it out. I'm going to talk about that later. But thank you again. Thank you for being here. And I see there's some comments, and people are commenting. Irene, hi, Irene. Hello. I like this new screen or whatever it's called. I think it's called cover, right? What is it? This one. Yeah, I thought, let's be a little proper. And I changed logos, I changed colors. So please let me know whether you like it or not. I just wanted to be a little bit more, I don't know, more honest, right? That's the wording here. Hi Tidy, hello. Hi Timmy, Tidy Whitey here, doing grocery shopping, won't be able to chat. Okay, so 20 minutes, we're almost there, so we welcome you back. So all together, today we're going to talk about all this that I listed here. So Russia is digging in, Ukraine is holding the lines, China is signaling deterrence, and all together, the good old UN Charter is being picked right, left, and center. And so what does it mean? Most importantly, for sovereignty of all the states. And so we certainly will connect the dots. And if you do connect the dots, you kind of understand and have a tiny bit of a preview of what we will continue dealing with in 2026. And so also tomorrow at 6 p.m. we will be live and recapping what happened in 2025 and previewing what will happen in 2026 with of course a bit of preview what are the think tanks and the analysts think could be potentially spots for escalation. Of course we're thinking about Greenland, of course we're thinking about obviously Taiwan and Palestine and Ukraine. This is ongoing, but what else can follow? And that we will be reviewing tomorrow alongside with actual news. Okay, so today we start with three main topics that altogether I think build one picture that again leads us to this UN Charter and the willingness to really disrupt it. And once you disrupt it, you disrupt the balance, right? The balance that our, fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and mothers obviously fought for. 80 years, we had some type of stability. For that exact time, the United States was this guarantor, was the stabilizer around the world. In today's world, the United States is not guaranteeing peace. It's actually being a trigger of the opposite. In today's world, the United States is not stabilizer, it's disruptor. And yes, the topic, as we're reading in the national security document, one, the extended one, the officially published one, the intention is to make it all America first. But is it America first or America alone? And what does it mean? Because for those 80 years, countries let America build bases, military bases on their soil to stabilize democracy, to bring democracy to their parts of the world, right? If you think about Middle East, if you think about, Latin America, but what is it now? Because at this point in time, we are disrupting and we're not doing it, hypothetically, we're doing it physically. Which leads me to the first piece of news, as today, United States conducted the very first land-based strike inside Venezuela. What we have seen for months at this point, we're blowing up boats, we're labeling them, those fishermen, as drug dealers. We don't really see anything, right? Those who manage to survive, those vanish. These people are, flown to third countries. We don't hear from them. Yeah, sometimes we hear reports from their families, from international channels. Families who are looking for their husbands, literally, who went fishing and never came back. And so, yeah, we still keep up the label. We, at this point, executed over 100 people. But today we started something new. The label is still same, though. It's same purpose to eliminate, the narco-terrorists. Altogether, officially, it's an ongoing campaign against narco-terrorist networks linked to Maduro regime. At this point, United States is, following that story about the glass house and the rocks that you're not supposed to throw, right, if you live in such, are we doing everything so well that we're supposed to be dealing with everybody else, right? Yeah, and somebody would come up and say, well, but then shouldn't we just forget about Ukraine? Let's just care about the United States, forget about Ukraine. But Ukraine is very much related to our own stability because it is related to NATO. It is in the heart of Europe. Now, Venezuela, like it or hate it, whether Maduro manipulated the election, which he did factually, that was shown. But is it still stable? Do we need to come in and start executing people under a label that, mind you, not even our US Congress came up with, declaring official war against a country or organizations or narco-terrorist networks? No, it is decided in one Oval Office. We hope it is decided in the Oval Office and not in chambers in the White House, in the West Wing, that are close to the Oval Office. But again, the narrative is the same. So New York Times today reported first that US officials have confirmed the destruction of a major drug-related facility inside Venezuela. Again, we have no idea what this facility is. We have no idea what they were doing and why they're supposed to be executed. The strike marks the first acknowledged onshore US military action in the ongoing campaign against narco-terrorist networks linked to Maduro regime, signaling a significant escalation beyond maritime and aerial interdictions. Now, again, no proof. There is no investigation leading to this decision to go ahead with a strike. Post-strike, we don't know what was eliminated, right? And yet we are sort of destined to celebrate it. And what I'm asking here, I'm not saying somebody is wrong or somebody is right. We can all agree that we are against drugs and narco-terrorist networks. But we also have to agree, are we still in democracy? Are we still going into 2026 where we celebrate 250 years of America? America as we know, America as we, immigrants like me, came here for better life, to build out our life and, pursue the dreams and happiness and all that? Or did America end last year, on the day when Supreme Court decided to give the absolute immunity to a president of the United States if he acts in favor of the country? That at that point, President Biden decided not to use it and spoke against it is secondary. This has been given. This has changed America. This America today is different legally than it was in 1776. So yes, we are celebrating 250 years, and I'm all for the celebration. But are we different legally? Regardless how we feel about it, regardless who you voted for, whether you are cheering or you're wearing red hats or you're against it and you're burning those red hats, regardless, are we different legally? Yes. Did we give somebody king-like powers? Yes. Did previous president under whom this went down do anything against it? No. He spoke against it. He didn't act against it. This president uses this immunity almost on a daily basis. When was the last time US Congress that we elected acted? Are they needed? So yes, when we're recapping 2025, which we're going to do tomorrow, and look forward into 2026, what shall we expect legally? What can we demand legally? What type of democracy is it? What countries can we compare ourselves to? On that more tomorrow. So let's talk about the Zelensky and Trump meeting yesterday. What was said, what was offered, what remains unresolved. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'm not going to show you Trump videos. Let's just really escape the noise and focus on what actually is the meat of the problem, right? What is actually being discussed? We're not going to go off the record. We're not going to go into conspiracy theories. But let's just recap how it all started, right? Long-awaited meeting between Ukrainian President Zelensky and US President Trump happened in this so-called Winter White House, Mar-a-Lago estate. Trump and Zelensky met there. Yes, there was a bit of a delay. Trump let Zelensky wait. Then he did arrive. I do have this at this point infamous picture of them, standing in front of the doors. Trump welcoming Zelensky, accepting some questions and whatnot. But even before that, right? Because then we dive into negotiation that we don't know about. It was followed by a conversation with UN leaders, EU, NATO, and UK leaders. And then they had some type of a press conference. But before we dive into this negotiation, let's first set the scene. And I want to begin a bit earlier. In order to see what this negotiation is about, we have to determine what the parties are. Who are those parties? Because yes, legally and officially, well, publicly at least, there's a war started by Russia, unprovoked, by invading Ukraine. Yes, we can refer to it as a war because the border has been crossed back and forth. At that point, legally, it became a war. Before that, it was invasion. Okay, it is a war. United States is negotiating. But if you do compare, for instance, what Qatar does when they negotiate the peace deal between Israel and Palestine, Qatari authorities, specifically foreign minister / prime minister, is welcoming both sides in Doha, and they're seated at the same table, or he talks to each party separately, and then they negotiate a deal. As far as we know, they do not roll in, the Qataris, and say, all right, guys, you on the left, you on the right, I'm in the middle. What am I getting from both of you? So I know why the heck am I here? This is not the situation that is there, nor it is known, right? If you are volunteering to negotiate a deal between two parties that are not speaking to each other, you're a mediator, right? Yes, it is long term. Yes, it is profitable for you because, for instance, with Qataris, that's in their Middle East, a part of the world. So stability for them is key. So from that perspective, it's of their interest to, of course, negotiate. And then they can build business and do business with both sides or neither. But then here with Ukraine, officially it is Ukraine and Russia and US mediating. This was not the case during the Biden administration because there was no contact with the Russians. Now there is contact with the Russians. We have the visual, which I want to show you. Let's compare, right? Because US says we're in the middle and we're negotiating in good faith. All right. So the previous meeting with the Russian leader was in Anchorage, Alaska. That's when Trump made our US military on our soil, at our US Air Force Base, roll out red carpet on the knees for Russian murderer, dictator, / best friend, admirer, I don't know, whatever is going on between Trump and Putin, their story. We saw that. Then the most recent meeting between Trump and Zelensky. Zelensky arrived in Palm Beach, Florida, the night before the meeting, and not greeted by any US official. Zero. Who was greeting him is Olga Stefanishina. She's ambassador of Ukraine to United States and Ukrainian authorities. And so when you look at those two receptions, if you will, does it look, though,
but I see your
you saw this. You saw the true colors. Based on the visual, comment. Is US a mediator? Because if I'm mediating in good faith, I'm ensuring, first and foremost, that I'm unbiased. Otherwise, I'm disqualified from mediating this case, right? Because this is the key here. I'm not focusing on some weirdness or conspiracy theories. This is a key because when we discuss whatever 20 points, 28 points, who cares? We need to know who the parties are. Is US negotiating in the middle or is it representing a side? Right? Here, James says, hi, Olga. Hi, I'm a little late. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Citizen-friendly checking in. Hi, hello. Hard to celebrate anything these days. As long as administration is in charge, you won't be celebrating. Celebrate you and your life. I mean, don't scratch those years just because you had this leadership. Don't show his videos. I can't stand. Okay, so we're not showing videos. I got you. So based on this video, we see that there is a favorable treatment of the Russians and Zelensky is arriving alone. There is some type of ignorance. Okay, we all can agree. Then, what is setting the stage now factually? We did have the national security document. This is where United States officially put out its foreign policy going forward, beyond 2026, beyond 2025 for sure. And that's where the attention was. And I did the whole deep dive on it. And you can watch it, you can read it. Please, I don't want to waste your time here. But United States clearly stated in this official document that was read by the entire world and all the officials that it seeks to rebuild relationship, close relationship, and business relationship with Russia. It says that Ukraine is the problem of Europe and has nothing to do with the US. It says US will be slowly withdrawing from Europe when it comes to NATO and will focus on the Americas, right? Meanwhile, it sort of states Putin will be dominating Europe, or at least Europe will be versus Putin, but it's not US problems. But US will continue selling equipment if it's paid for it. Okay, so very transactional relationship. When it comes to Indo-Pacific, yes, it says that Taiwan will be stabilized. Now, seeing is believing, and today we're going to talk about it, and we will see how stable that situation is as recent as in a couple of hours, and I'll explain why. Now, so based on this document alone, again, we see another reason to believe that US is not really negotiating in good faith. Mind you, we're not talking about Trump, Russia, or agent or Krasnov or whatever. Let's leave that aside. Let's focus on the factual, right? The videos are actual. The NSS is a factual document, right? Then, in the weeks leading to yesterday's meeting, Ukrainian leadership held multiple talks with the U.S. representation. U.S. representation is Witkoff, who's envoy, Kushner, whose title is son-in-law, and apparently this counts. None of them are elected. None of them are approved by anybody but the president himself. But he has the immunity. He acts in the interest of the country. Supreme Court allowed him to do it. Cool. We're rolling. Ukraine is represented lately, as of late, with Umerov, who is the head of National Security Council, also with Kislitsa, who is former UN ambassador of Ukraine, or Ukraine ambassador to UN, currently advisor to President Zelensky's office. They have several titles, they change. So anyway, that is their representation. Also, as I mentioned before, Olga Stefanishina, she is the relatively new Ukraine ambassador to US. So this is the Ukrainian side. And of course, you have the presidents on both sides. Before the presidents enter the picture, those meetings have been held multiple times in Florida. It's always in either Mar-a-Lago or Miami itself, but it's always Florida. And then through those negotiations, right? First, there were 28 points, which was drafted by Kremlin. We discussed it extensively, so let's leave it. Now it is 20 points. Some points Ukraine easily sort of agreed to, even though it is illegal, goes against international law, such as a point to reduce or determine the size of Ukrainian army, which is forbidden by international law. From UN charter to Vienna Convention. I described all that in deep dives and in multiple articles, free to access. Please watch it. But Ukraine said, okay, I mean, you said 900,000 or whatever, the number was. The latest is 800,000 troops we're going to keep, because at this point we have 900,000 during wartime. So in times of peace, presumably, it will be very difficult to even keep up this number, because, now the army is based not of people who basically professionally serve, as anybody and everybody is going to fight for the sovereignty and integrity of its country. So of their country, right? So at this point, he said even the 800,000 troops would be ideally composed by several European states to even maintain this number. Okay, so Ukraine agreed. There were other topics with the church and the language and all that. All that aside, two main issues crystallized themselves. One is the territorial issue. Russia has been fighting to get Donbass region since 2014, and it's not achieving anything near it. They have been lying. They're lying more. Today they continue to lie. But their goal is to get the Donbass region. I explained why earlier. Essentially, they don't want to monetize it. They want to prevent Ukraine from monetizing it. They don't really are interested. They're not interested in rebuilding it. They're interested in owning this area and prohibit Ukraine from essentially being sustainable. Let's put it this way. Another issue is Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, because it's very dominant in European area. And so what Russians want is essentially both US and Russia have interest in that, but US interest is to monetize it. They essentially say, we will, and that's what the Russians apparently agreed to, will use $100 billion of Russian assets that are in the US to purchase the Zaporizhia plant, and Russians will run it. And then the idea came up that Ukraine should be buying electricity or energy produced by the nuclear power plant based in Ukraine. This is packaged by the White House as a security guarantee to Ukraine. Since I'm going to own your plant, they call it outsourcing. Russians will run it and I'll sell it. So I'm monetized. I'm interested in keeping that business. So this is my security guarantee to you. When it comes to security as to having forces, right? Those 800,000 troops that I referred to earlier, this is on Europe. Ask Europe to allocate or not allocate. This is not our business. We're monetizing nuclear plant. We also monetize those minerals that U.S. really, really, really wanted. And by the way, that was negotiated by the same Olga Stefanishina and current prime minister in Ukraine. So they all are part of that minerals negotiation, which went through. Now, you can't really monetize them now because there's, first of all, war. Also, partially, those are in occupied areas. Who's going to dig up those minerals or not? Regardless, Trump wanted to win. He got some type of a win with that type of deal. But in effect, it's not really relevant here. So this is the deal with Zaporizhia plant. Now, when it comes to the territories, right, and the Zaporizhia plant, this is what Zelensky reiterated before the meeting with Trump. Quote, Ukraine has clear red lines. These are the territories and the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation under any circumstances. Now, in fact, it actually can't. Yes, there's a big talk about referendum. I wrote a whole article. I kept it short, straight to the point, literally bullet points. It's pinned on all my profiles. Please read it. Because you hear this referendum, territories, referendum, territory. Dedicate 3 minutes of your time to learn about it. So you can build, again, your own opinion. That's the whole premise of what I'm doing here. So, legally conceding territory would violate Ukraine's constitution. So in order to allow that, yes, you have two ways. You can either have parliament vote on a new constitution or amended constitution, but then this will lead to a different story where essentially a state is, yes, still Ukraine, but the legal system is now different. So every single country that has any kind of agreement with Ukraine, any company either, would have to reach to Ukraine and reconfirm every single agreement, because this is now a new legal system type of story. Now there's a referendum, and this is what Zelensky is referring to. Um, let's bring up what was discussed yesterday at a bit later point, but the referendum means they're going to put this up for a vote. Per Ukrainian constitution, it means every single person who is allowed to vote in Ukraine, who's a citizen, has to be able to vote. That means those on front lines, those overseas, those whose passports are expired and you have to wait on average now about 6 months to even get it. Those inside Ukraine in occupied areas, every single person would need to vote, or the results of such voting would be seen as irrelevant, fake, right? And manipulated. Now, this is sort of the referendum they're referring to. If this referendum passes, still Parliament, first of all, the Supreme Court in Ukraine has to verify it. Then the Parliament has to vote twice to verify it. This is not a 1 month situation. If you're moving really at scale and at speed, this is going to take about a year, assuming that at every single stage you're going to get a yes. So this is highly questionable to succeed, given that if also for all of this you have to lift the martial law. Martial law means the war has to end, the ceasefire has to be in effect, which Russia denies. How are you gonna do the voting situation if there is still bombardment going on, right? And people can't physically go and vote. The idea United States comes up with, let's have an app, preferably created by somebody, maybe Palantir, maybe SpaceX. Let's create an app where people would be voting online, and so they can do it from front lines. Just download an app. I leave you to build your own opinion about voting via app, okay? And every single security issue that goes with it. But throughout those engagements, right, between Ukraine and US, Ukraine's position remained consistent, and it was willingness to negotiate peace paired with a demand for legally binding, ratified security guarantees. What Zelensky wants is security guarantees that are ratified and approved by US Congress, also by EU Council and all that, right? So at one point, they discussed NATO Article 5 style assurances. I explained it every single time. Article 5 gives you 3 options to veto it. All countries have to agree there has been aggression, it was premeditated. Second, that it requires a response. And thirdly, that they have to agree on the type of response needed. So every single stage can be vetoed by anybody. Now, Turkey is sort of, they're getting nuclear power plant from Russia with love in Turkey, and we'll see a thing about that in a bit. So Turkey is part of NATO that can surely violate it. Don't even blame Trump. Turkey can violate it. Anybody can violate it, right? Think about Hungary, what they do in the EU, and Slovakia and all. So you have a lot of players there that can pull the trigger. Now, Kremlin aide Ushakov, that's the one who has been, whenever you see him giving an interview, he always looks behind. And he sort of speaks, of course, for Kremlin. And also he is part of this negotiating team from the Russian side. So meanwhile, Witkov Kushner, they didn't meet just with Ukrainians. They also traveled to Russia and met with Russian delegation. Also, Russian delegation came, of course, to Miami and Mar-a-Lago, and they're meeting there. So they're doing their business. We don't know what they're discussing. There is no readout. There is nothing. They're also meeting with Ukrainians. And the only readout for Ukrainian side is by Umerov and by ultimately Zelensky. We don't have anything from the White House. We have nothing from Kremlin either. So Ushakov demanded Ukraine's immediate withdrawal from Donbass and rejected proposed 2-month ceasefire to allow referendum, a position Trump later echoed publicly. So Russia said no to ceasefire, which then puts referendum, into question, unless you have this app. You can have this goddamn app and just do all through it, right? And they said, give us Donbass immediately. All that is said a day before Trump-Zelensky meeting. So Trump, on the eve of the meeting, accused United Nations of failing to stop the war and claimed the United States had effectively replaced it. Quote, over the past 11 months, I have resolved and stopped all wars and conflicts, 8 of them. Perhaps the United States has become the real United Nations. I don't know where to start here. And then he tweeted on the day of meeting Zelensky. Oops, long one. Where do I have it? Anyway, he tweeted that he spoke with Putin. Later, we found out it was a 2.5-hour conversation with Putin, which explains Trump's tiredness during the meeting with Zelensky. Trump said, quote, I just had a good and very productive telephone call with President Putin of Russia prior to my meeting at 1 p.m. today with Zelensky of Ukraine. The meeting will take place in the main dining room at Mar-a-Lago. Press invited. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So Putin explained him what and how, right? Because we see, again, based on visuals, based on NSS, based on what Russia says and what US says. US is sort of representing Russia's side at this meeting. Upon greeting Zelensky at Mar-a-Lago, Trump declared negotiations were in their final stages, suggesting the war would end. The war could end very soon or go on forever. I can marry you very soon or never. How's that for an answer? Brings you clarity? He joked about Ukraine's strikes inside Russia, quipping they didn't come from Congo. Why was Congo on his mind? Because he claims to have negotiated a deal between Congo and Colombia. It makes no sense. Nothing is negotiated anyway. Did I miss Putin's response? No, I didn't. Okay, moving on. The meeting opened with press spray. Press spray is literally what you see here. This is where the delegations are seated. On the left, you see Ukraine. On the right, you see the American delegation. Now, this photo is taken during the negotiation. If you zoom in, you can see Kushner is standing. Zelensky is nervous and angry, and Trump is screaming. But regardless, the pool spray means when they come in, the press enters the room. That's where the press is usually screaming. Here they weren't. And, takes pictures, asks questions. There were no opening statements. There was no press engagement, but press was offered to leave the room and have a dinner or lunch.
Everyone fine? Margot, if you would, I think you could sit outside and have some food. Would you like to have food, or do you consider that a bribe? And therefore you cannot write honestly, or therefore you have to write a bad story. Okay, because if you'd like, would you like something to eat at this time? Yes or no? You can speak.
Yes, sir.
Yes? Okay. Margot,
Yes, sir.
take them outside, tell the chef, serve them a little lunch, okay?
Thank you, press.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
That should
Please leave the way
guarantee
you
good
came.
stories,
Thank
but
you,
it
press.
won't.
Thanks, guys, for coming.
If you're interested, they were a fad. I have it here. Where do I have this? Very important information, of course. Coconut shrimp, pigs in blankets, steak, fries, cookies, and Trump branded water. One person claimed the branded water was from 2011. Anyway, I wasn't there. I don't know. During the meeting, US and Ukrainian delegations held also virtual calls with EU, UK, and NATO leaders. Naturally, all NATO leaders thanked Trump for being amazing and the talks being productive and blah, blah, blah. The most realistic take was provided by Prime Minister Tusk of Poland. He said, after nighttime talks with leaders of European countries, one thing is certain. The West and Ukraine will lose the confrontation if Russia manages to divide us and dictate the terms of peace. A success is the declaration of US participation in security guarantees, but we are still far from the final talks. Kadumps. So, mic drop moment. Trump says talks are very close, or actually not close at all, so he's always right. Now, Poland lets us feel that, the only thing that I would sort of question is U.S. is security guarantee provider. U.S. is risk now. It's not a guarantee, it's a risk. Or it's a guarantee for risk. So, anywho, after meeting, they had a press conference, Trump and Zelensky. You can't really call it press conference because Zelensky only read the statement. Trump was talking, answering questions. But altogether, it didn't bring any clarity, but did, though, reinstate Kremlin talking points. That's why I started from so far building the stage and the picture. So now you can hear that those points are being reiterated. Post-meeting, media interaction, Zelensky spoke minimally. Trump praised Putin, echoed Kremlin talking points, and stated that Putin really wants Ukraine to succeed, prompting a visibly stunned reaction from Zelensky that quickly went viral. Take a look.
Ukraine succeed. Once it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin, Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining.
So later, Zelensky gave an interview to Fox News. He also gave a brief briefing via WhatsApp app for journalists. He said, quote, "On one hand, Putin tells the US he wants peace. On the other, he bombards us with missiles and celebrates the destruction of civilian infrastructure." And he said that he told that to Trump in the meeting. So whatever you just heard came after. Now, Trump also in that press, whatever that was, proposed resolving Donbass via referendum or parliamentary vote, claiming 90% would support it. Later, Zelensky countered on Fox News, quote, 85% of Ukrainians support peace and 85% oppose withdrawing from Donbass. So all this can go through if you do that app voting. And luckily, I would be voting too. So I'll take you step by step through that voting, if that ever, in any fashion it happens. I certainly am a voter, so I'll take you with me. Now, Trump also confirmed U.S. interest in the Zaporizhzhia plant, proposing a structure in which U.S. owns it, Russia operates it, and Ukraine purchases energy at a very cheap prices. I will steal your house, let your neighbor run it, so you can pay rent for living in it. Security guarantees were shifted to Europe. Trump dismissed the complexity of negotiations, stating they'll just keep dying if it all fails. Now, Ukraine conditions going forward. Zelensky emphasized the past agreements, the Budapest Memorandum, and Minsk Accords failed because they lacked enforcement. This time, Ukraine demands first, U.S. congressional approval of security guarantees, ratification by Ukrainian and European parliaments, and nationwide referendum for any comprehensive peace plan. This is the part where Zelensky, if true, shoots himself in the foot. Because you are now at this point offering to violate your own constitution. If anything, if they demand it, let them demand it. And you say, no, I need this first. Like, what do you do? Quote, this would be the strongest historical endorsement, not by one person, but by millions. Now, 5 notable add-ons to this meeting and this whole debacle, right? First, let's draw a conclusion here. Nothing was achieved with that meeting. No bonuses for anybody but Russia. Their points reached us. Because usually their points are reiterated on Russian state media that we don't necessarily consume. But now they reached us because they were spoken by our president. Hence, Hallelujah, Mazel Tov, here we are. Now, 5 notable add-ons. On the same day, remember I told you there is Kirill Dmitriev, who is in Russia, head of Russian Sovereign Fund, so the holder of Putin's wallet. And he's also headlining the negotiations between Kremlin and Witkoff and Kushner. At the same time yesterday, Kirill Dmitriev was also in Florida. And how do we know? Because he shared a video. I'll spare you the visual, but he shared a video. Here's a screenshot labeling this Miami spirit. He was surfing in Miami, or being dragged by a boat, if you can call it surfing, whatever you call it. Anywho, he was right there. Very interesting timing. Now, other add-on. UK Defense produces reports on a daily basis on Ukraine. And I want to show you this one because this is freaking magnificent. I know nobody can read this tiny as print, but UK Defense reports 550 Russian civilians were killed by returning war veterans, many who were recruited from the prisons. So, a significant number of Russian military veterans returning from fighting in the illegal invasion of Ukraine, I'm quoting this whole thing, have reportedly perpetrated violent crimes against Russian citizens. Independent Russian media outlet Vertska has reported that approximately 550 civilians within Russia have been killed by returning veterans, with a further 465 injured. Over half of the deaths were reportedly caused by some of the 180,000 convicts recruited to Russia's armed forces to participate in the conflict. The Wagner paramilitary group first recruited convicts from conflict in 2022, using almost 50,000 prisoners from Russia's jails in total, with inmates being offered commutation of their sentences after 6 months of service. Subsequently, Russia's Ministry of Defense recruited convicts directly from prisons, with Russian President Putin also signing October 2024 law which allowed defendants in criminal cases to avoid trial and potential sentencing in exchange for enlisting. The challenge presented to Russian society by tens of thousands of violent offenders with recent and often traumatic combat experience returning to civilian life, particularly having been subject to brutality of Russia's armed forces, is significant and will likely increase in scale in the medium term. The Russian senior leadership highly likely considers this issue to be a matter of growing concern. Another add-on, the EU confirms sanctions are draining Russia's war economy. Specifically, Russia allocated 46% of its budget in 2026 to war. There is no country that can balance its existence with 46% fighting a war that is not really against them. We understand if Ukraine does it, but you are invading somebody highly unsuccessfully since 2014, at this point for 12 freaking years, and you spend 46% of your budget on this invasion. Yes, you're recruiting convicts, but you're also losing men. What is going to happen to your reproductive whatever? You can talk about standard traditional family values, but if you don't have men, what kind of value is going to end up with? Well, Putin recently suggested there should be marriages beginning with 14-year-olds. So maybe that's the thing. Now, Institute for Study of War made an assessment that Russia cannot significantly increase its pace of advance in 2026. Now, Ukrainian intelligence chief Kirill Budanov warned that Russia uses negotiations as a weapon, and February may be the best window for a deal. Let's draw a line here. There's one thing that Russia cannot afford, and it is time. It's bleeding money. It's bleeding people. It's on the verge of a civil war. I don't know what's happened, but it's falling apart, and it has absolutely no success on the battlefield. It's being drained by China because China increased its purchases from Russia, but the income, the profit decreased. So, China also takes parts of territories. North Koreans got nuclear intel in return. Iran, same story. So Russia's not in good shape. So who would be benefiting from, let's say, publicly posturing that I'm almighty? If you touch me, I'm going to nuke the hell out of the whole world. I want to continue this war. Give me this, give me that. I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Ho! But if you have a negotiating party, so-called mediator, mediating on your behalf, pushing your opponent to some type of a deal on your behalf, then now you're playing both fronts. Russia says it's not interested, but it's very interested. And its interest is represented and fought for by the US delegation. You have different opinion? Good. This is my take. Let me know what your take is. Now, Budanov, right, the head of Ukrainian intelligence, also noted for the US, China is main adversary. Pulling Russia away from Beijing requires incentives. At this point, it's so difficult to do such thing. But, this brings us to Asia. And this is the second topic I want to discuss today. It will be 3. The other 2 are much shorter, so I'm not going to overstay my welcome. Also, your newsletter is coming literally right away because I use this thing as proofreading effort. So, China, Taiwan, and Japan. There is a huge strategic shift happening right this moment. We all know that China likes to do training, right? Training all around Taiwan. Right? They call it national security training. They call it Taiwan independence. It has different types of names. Yes, they scheduled another training, but this training is a bit different. Let me check the comment here. Maybe it's a question. Oh, thank you for reposting the stream. Thank you. Nice place. My place for McDonald's. Okay. Kherson, Zaporizhia are located outside Donbass region. Yes. The one Donbass and Zaporizhia plant. Okay, so China, Taiwan, and Japan. So Russia's foreign minister, Lavrov, declared today that Moscow would support China in any escalation over Taiwan, adding that Beijing and Moscow have jointly warned Japan. Taiwan's National Security Council and Ministry of Defense confirmed a large-scale PLA exercise. And to visualize it, please check out this picture here. This includes an 8th unannounced warning zone. You see here the yellow thing? So this is an unannounced 8th warning zone for live fire drills on December 30th, which is already now there. It's from 9 a.m. till 11 a.m. for the 8th zone specifically. But all this blockade, essentially, of Taiwan is happening today, literally in 2 hours. So, yes, it's called Justice Mission 2025, Chinese military exercise visualization. But for the first time, China explicitly stated the drills are aimed at deterring outside military intervention, not Taiwanese independence, which was the label for all of those previous tasks. This is now about Japan. And why? Because 7 weeks ago, Japanese leadership, right, under new Prime Minister Takaichi, declared Taiwan blockade a survival-threatening situation. So now China is producing this situation. Beijing responded with the most severe diplomatic escalation since 1972. We all saw it, right? These drills will likely conclude without conflict, but the doctrine has changed, right? With this pretense for this type of training, they changed the doctrine. So now they're not rehearsing for Taiwan independence, they're rehearsing for foreign players. These drills, again, Beijing is now warning Tokyo, not Taipei. So, now, about Japan. Japan completed live testing of its upgraded Type 12 anti-ship missile, extending its range to 1,000 kilometers. Once a coastal defense weapon, it now enables deep strike and sea denial capabilities across the East China Sea. Japan also launched the final Mogami-class stealth frigate, completing one of its most advanced naval modernization programs. It also allocated $68 billion to its defense. It's also giving $6 billion to Ukraine. I have interviewed the senior advisor to national security advisor of Taiwan. It's a 10-minute interview. It's on our YouTube. Just watch it. It's also in the form of an article if you prefer reading. This was done a couple of months ago during UNGA in New York, a conversation with Dr. Yuju Lee at the Concordia Summit. This was during UNGA 80. He's answering all the questions about Taiwan. He's drawing parallels between Taiwan and Ukraine, and he is answering questions as honest as possible. So spend 10 minutes, read it. Now, there was another thing happening today. Trump and Netanyahu meeting. Trump met with Prime Minister Netanyahu at, well, Mar-a-Lago. Where else? Key issues were Iran's nuclear activity, because Israeli intelligence claims that Iran is quickly rebuilding whatever U.S. claims to have obliterated, and it requires potentially another strike. There's another story of Israel recognizing Somaliland, part of Somalia, as an independent state, which goes against international law. It goes against UN Charter. We can talk about whether it would be nice for Somaliland to be separated from Somalia, as much as we talk about New York State or California or Florida or Texas to be separated, or, there are parts of Canada that want to be independent suddenly too, right? So we can strategize and theoretically what that would look like, but there's international law. There's UN Charter that protects sovereignty of states. Now, first, Trump and Netanyahu met, of course, at Mar-a-Lago. And Trump got on a hot mic, right? So he met with Netanyahu. He had a conversation, but then we come back to that conversation. When they went to the spray again, where the parties are seated, the mics were on. And Trump started rattling about him not getting the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, I solved those goddamn 8 wars. Why am I not getting this Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize? Fast forward, we're going to, no, we're not skipping what happened in between, but to draw a point. When they then connected with the press after the meeting, Netanyahu, on a whim, which looks like, came up with a solution to grant Trump an Israel Prize for the first time. Take a look.
And to Israel, it's been my honor. And the award that I was given was really surprising and very much appreciated.
Well, President Trump has broken so many conventions to the surprise of people, and then they figure out, oh, well, maybe, he was right after all. So we decided to break a convention too, or create a new one, and that is to award the Israel Prize, which in almost our 80 years, we've never awarded it to a non-Israeli. And we're going to award it this year to President Trump. This was announced formally over lunch.
3 points from that meeting. Trump indicated a pardon for Netanyahu is on the way because he managed to convince the president of Israel, Herzog, to pardon Netanyahu from his legal cases. U.S. support for further Israeli strikes on Iran is reiterated by Trump, so there will be another strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. And Iran's internal unrest, meanwhile, is escalating because their currency collapses to 1.45 million per dollar. I'll write a whole article about it, but they have protests. People are on the streets. They're protesting the government. It's a collapse inside Iran. Meanwhile, Trump is greenlighting further strikes. Also, this day, even though Netanyahu meeting and all, it was dominated by Putin again. So, just to recap, in the past 24 hours, President of the United States spoke to President of murderous Russia for 2.5 hours before meeting President Zelensky. He spoke with him after, and he spoke with him this morning because Putin came up with the idea to blame Ukraine for trying to execute him at his mansion in Volgograd with 29 alleged drones. No proof, no photos, no videos, no radars, nothing. But Putin made sure to call Trump this morning to complain about that alleged strike. And this is what Trump had to say.
The alleged strike on Putin's residence could scuttle the peace.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good. Don't forget, the Tomahawks. I stopped the Tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they're offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that.
It's like Helsinki all over again. But in Helsinki, when Trump was saying that he doesn't trust his own intelligence services, but trust what Putin is saying. But at that point, we had intelligence services that were reporting actual information. At this point, everything runs by the same Oval Office. So nobody's contradicting Putin at this point, and who knows what is true. I'm actually waiting for MI6 or somebody, to state. Ukraine obviously denied it and said that's the last thing we kind of want to do at this point. Tidy Whitey Tim is saying Iran's president declared they were at war with USA, Israel, and Europe. Yes, they declared it yesterday. Can the Israeli president really override? I don't know. Apparently. I guess like here, and we'll have to dig into accordion hands. Yeah. Okay, so sum it up. UN Charter. I know we can talk about UN being efficient, not efficient, blah. But the UN Charter is a problem for all of those players because it ensures that the sovereignty is protected, it's respected. So now, sovereignty meaning territorial integrity, collective security, it's all being tested now everywhere. Ukraine, obviously, Taiwan, obviously, Cyprus. Yeah, because Turkey now wrote a letter to UN Security Council claiming that part of Cyprus should belong to Turkey because they want to put a military base there. Somalia, obviously, right? Israel is declared Somaliland independent. They want to put military base there. This is a given. This is a fact, and this has been proven. Now, there's another rumor. I'll paint it as a rumor that they want to put Palestinians there. I don't know how that would physically work, but it does exist. It's unconfirmed. Let's see it as a rumor. But the military base is a fact, though. So once the structure is fractured, and what you need for that, you don't need the whole world to blow up. You just need a goddamn referendum with an online app. Whether this will be Ukraine, Taiwan, Cyprus, Greenland, Donbass, Somalia, whatever. You need one. Because the law everywhere, aside from Russia, is precedent related. Like if it precedes whatever, you can refer to the previous case. So, they're trying to nuke this UN Charter from all sides, and let's see if that sort of succeeds. But this sort of a preview from whatever we're gonna look into it, into what's gonna happen in 2026. There are credible reports from Council on Foreign Relations on Rescue.org. We'll review what they are, foreseeing, because what they planned for, saw for 2025 sort of was realistic, not clickbaity. So we'll see what they plan for next year. Now, some quick moments. I want to show you this video. So Russia again, right? We don't really consume their disinformation. So how else we're going to find it out unless we show it here? right as the meeting was being prepared, right, with Trump and Zelensky, Russian state media, Sputnik, put out a video that that Russian embassies have retweeted since then. It portrays Putin as a Santa Claus who's bringing presents to all his friends. I know it's an AI generated video. It's not about that, but I want you to look at it because it really has, well, describes all the intentions that Russia has. Take a look.
Not war, just peace, forever, forever, forever.
To recap, yen and ruble shine, US dollar crashes, India gets fighter jets, Trump gets a portrait, Maduro gets full support, Turkey gets nuclear power, North Korea gets gratitude and strength, Orban gets Russian gas, and Zelensky gets prison. I mean, it's an AI video. It's very realistic visually and theoretically. And yet Trump says, quote, I saw a very interesting President Putin today. I mean, he wants to see it happen. He wants to see it. He told me very strongly. I believe him. Don't forget, we went through the Russia hoax together, and he'd call me. I'll call him. I'd say, can you believe the stuff they're making up? It turned out we were right. They made it all up. At this point in our society, we say, get a room. But I want to finish off with a couple of quotes from European leaders. So, okay, in Europe, for instance, member of European Parliament from Germany, CDU party, Dennis Radke said, quote, Trump is morally completely rotten. Further group trips from the EU in which one makes a fool of oneself can be spared. A very German constellation of things, but essentially he says exactly what you guys comment. Dave Troy, publisher and editor, quote, people ask me when Trump will impose martial law or invoke the Insurrection Act, and my answer is always that Americans are exhausted and won't do anything that gets in the way of regular trips to Costco. There is simply no need for martial law because we are already compliant. That's where I want to end. You're going to have quick national news about severe winter storms, about what else? January 6th guy pleading guilty, Google rolling out Gmail addresses, changes, 2 helicopters colliding in New Jersey, horrible yesterday, and Texas expanding its park system. Also some quick global news from Canada, China, Turkey, Russia, Spain, Poland, and Ukraine. But before we end, so this will be in your newsletter that comes really shortly. Please read it. Please share it. It's free. You don't have to sign up even for it. But please consume actual news so you can build actual opinions. Unless you really like fast food, like we really care what we put inside our body, right? You really care about not consuming shitty foods. But if you consume shitty information, you're feeding your brain shit. So your opinion will be based on what? I'll let you finish it. And to finish on a really vast note, we always finish on humanity. And today marks 1 year anniversary since former President Jimmy Carter's passing. Um, I was blessed with meeting him and interacting with him and being connected to the family. And it's a somber moment. We know he lived a very full life and accomplished, beyond anybody else's accomplishment. And, he goes down in history as a president of decency. And so I wanted to show you a video from the Carter house or Carter Initiative, his library essentially, Carter Center. Yes, that's what it's called. Just reflecting on his legacy, because let's finish on some note of decency. Let me check if that video is right.
But we try to
It is right, so let's watch.
but we try to adhere to the basic principles of morality and honesty and integrity. So peace and freedom, human rights, and the alleviation of suffering, equality of opportunity on earth, the giving of every human being a modicum of self-respect and human dignity, and hope that their future would be better. Those are the things that I believe are completely possible. We are willing to take a chance that we might fail if we believe that the ultimate goal is worthwhile, worth our effort, and worth an investment in people who have been neglected by others. And this has proven time after time to be a successful chance that we've taken.
America had good presidents, and I believe America has good citizens. If you can find goodness within you, fight for it. You want dignity and decency, be dignified and decent. You want proactive, be proactive, but don't be compliant. That last quote that I mentioned, why install some type of martial law here? We're already compliant. There's no need to manage us. We're already self-managed. All we care is watch TV, go to Costco, work, home, repeat. Go beyond. It's not the time to be complacent or compliant. This complacency will bite us, all of us, in our big giant behind very soon. It's already biting us now. But the year of 2025 was a year of instability. This is where U.S. shook up the world. Now the dust will settle and pieces will fall where they may fall, and this will be 2026. Now, where do they expect to be landing? That's what we're going to review tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow around 6 p.m. and we're going to dive into it. All right. Have a good night. Keep your head on a swivel. Escape the noise. All of whatever you watch on television or on Twitter shit or whatever, a lot of it is noise. Protect your well-being, right? Consume actual news. Have a good night.